Everybody, this is Joyce Barron, going live with an update on my husband Ken Barron. This is day 12 that he has been in the custody of the Department of Corrections in the state of Delaware, based on the prosecutor creating evidence and committing many acts of misconduct and a public defender who would not defend him. So, I really don't have much of an update to report. As I said on Monday, I went and I visited him, but there was no sound, so we couldn't talk. We did manage to do some communication. He still does not have access to the funds in his commissary, which I understand is a very big problem with inmates. The money that is deposited is kept in the GTL accounts for Department of Correction, but it never gets to the inmates that need it. And in prison, commissary is a mean of currency. So with Ken being physically unable to do many things, it's important that he has commissary, so he could say, so and so, will you wash my underwear, and pay them with food. And that is a person who doesn't have anyone on the outside supporting them. So they get the commissary funds and everybody's happy. So it's also preventing him from calling outside the jail. As I said yesterday, they have a wristband, and he's lost so much weight that his wristband just fell off his wrist when he put his hand down. But they have a wristband with their ID number, their SBI number, and they need to key that in order to make a phone call. They need to be able to use their commissary and their PIN in order to get writing materials to communicate with the outside world. They need to put that PIN in so that when I go to visit or someone else goes to visit, that they actually can hear you on the little handset that they have in the window. So I've been working. I'm not getting any response from anybody in Delaware. And I've spent 2 afternoons this week talking to the FBI, and the person that I spoke to doesn't do any active investigation. She just documents and passes it on. So I was trying to remain really hopeful. This afternoon, Johnny and I went out. The Kmart near us was closing, and we got like some of the fixtures, the pegboard and so forth for the cabin and the shed. Really good price, and I just needed to have a distraction. So on the way home, we stopped at another store to get something we had forgotten, and I happened to see the front page of the News Journal, which is the Wilmington, Delaware, the main paper in Delaware. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the front page headline in the News Journal today, and I'm going to read the story to you, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on. Okay, here's the front page article. Now, from the beginning, I have alleged that they manufactured evidence starting on day one, that they filed a petition with the court stating I had made these horrible, horrible, horrible statements to police before I even had gotten to the police station for the interview. So, Wilmington Trust is a very big bank in Delaware, and a number of the executives of Wilmington Trust were recently indicted for fraud-related crimes. So this is what the article says. Attorneys representing 4 ex-Wilmington Trust executives accused of criminal bank fraud say prosecutors knowingly presented false testimony during the defendant's grand jury hearing. Does that sound familiar? The defense attorneys have asked the court to grant discovery so they can collect evidence to present their claim. In addition, they are asking the court to dismiss some of the charges against the executives. Okay, now here comes something really important. It appears that the government ran afoul of a basic prohibition that the government may not secure an indictment based on the knowing presentation of false testimony to the grand jury. All right. So if you don't know what the grand jury is, what happens is, let's say there's a crime allegedly that's been committed. The police officers do their work, and then they hand the report over to the prosecutor's office. the prosecutor has to go before a group of people called a grand jury, which is a very secretive procedure. And the grand jury decides whether or not there is enough evidence to proceed with criminal charges. Now, in Ken's charges, what happened is the police reports stated that the girl said nothing happened. We said nothing happened. There was no physical evidence of any kind of abuse. But the girls were still taken from our home, and the prosecutor, Jonathan Harding, wrote the false statements in the petition before I ever got to the police station. And there have been other false statements made since then. So, in order for Ken to be arrested, they had to go beyond those statements. There was a later interview where the older girl, Samantha, was obviously coached. And she had been locked in a room with a CPS investigator, Jenna Christopherson, and Jenna is the forensic investigator that did this whole thing. She attended the University of Minnesota, which I've been posting some articles recently about how they're involved in public policy, something called the Duluth model, which is very prejudicial against men. It's breaking up the American family, controlling the way the courts are run, and it's ensuring that women go free of crimes and that basically men can be thrown in jail based on what somebody says. They also are the authors of the CAC model. There's different protocols. When a child is suspected of being molested, there's a procedure they go through. They take them to a place and they do it in a very friendly way to not bother the child. But there's different ways. So the CAC is from the university that the investigator, Jenna Christopherson, went to. Now, I've looked at her social media page. There's no mention or pictures of any father figure. She's never dated a man. She's very young. She has no children of her own. So she hasn't been exposed to a relationship or a motherhood of having any practical knowledge. And, because there's no evidence of having a father figure or any male figure in her life, she's not accustomed to normal interaction between male adults and female children. So, in the CAC protocol, one of the problems with it is that they don't ask children if they know the difference between a truth and a lie, and they do not tell children they are expected to tell the truth. And then there's a number of other issues, and that's too long to go into right now. But they use a protocol that really has been under fire as being inaccurate. And this little girl was locked in a room with Jenna Christopherson, who's from this university that is very hateful towards men, who comes up with public policy statements that are harmful to them. And then after being locked in a room for 2 hours, at the request of a father with substance abuse problems who had been committed to a psychiatric hospital, who had a PFA preventing any contact with the children and was in the process of seeking custody, she said, he touched my breast and he touched between my legs, but I can't remember how he did it, which hand he used, where he did it, how it happened, how many times, blah, 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 blah. So, based on that, which I believe was a coached interview because nothing ever happened, I was there all the time, the grand jury indicted Ken. So, here we have another case. 4 executives of a very prominent bank were arrested based on the same type of behavior from the prosecutor's office. Okay, let's continue on with this article. Former Wilmington Trust President Robert Hara Jr., former Chief Financial Officer David Gibson, former Chief Credit Officer William North, and former Controller Kevin Rakowski faced trial in October on charges of fraud, conspiracy, and making false statements to federal prosecutors. So, here we see horrible crimes, 4 men accused of horrible crimes by the prosecutor's office. Prosecutors contend these 4 individuals defrauded the Federal Reserve Bank and others by misrepresenting the bank's failing commercial loan portfolio before it collapsed in 2011. A key part of the prosecutor's claim is that the defendants did not label certain mature loans as past due. That is based partly because Federal Reserve Bank examiner David Fomanian, I think is how it's pronounced. If I screwed your name up, Mr. Examiner, I'm sorry. Told prosecutors in 2013 that Wilmington Trust executives never reported the past due loans according to court documents. But defense attorneys say the grand jury testimony of an unnamed FBI agent directly contradicts Fomanian's statements. The FBI agent testified that Fomanian told him he was, quote, unaware, end quote, if defendants failed to report past due loans. 3 of the assistant United States attorneys who had been present during Fomanian's 2013 interview were also present during the FBI agent's testimony, and one of those attorneys questioned the FBI agent according to court documents. Yet, none of the attorneys raised the issue of Fomanian's earlier statements defense attorneys allege. Okay, let's continue on. That the government withheld this highly exculpable information for 2 years is inexplicable. Sorry, I've had a long day and my tongue is twisting. Kelly wrote in the motion. Even more troubling and pertinent to this motion, the government presented the following testimony to the grand jury. Prosecutors involved in the case were unable to be reached for comment. Kelly declined to comment on the motion. The defense attorneys have asked the U.S. District Court for the District Delaware to grant discovery to pursue this claim. They have asked prosecutors to turn over all notes and documents from interviews with Fomanian and Federal Reserve Bank examiner James Corkery, along with certain grand jury hearings. In addition, the defense has asked for an evidentiary hearing to question the testifying FBI agent Fomanian and all members of the prosecution team who attended Fomanian's interview. A previous attempt by defense attorneys to subpoena Federal Reserve officials was squashed by a federal judge last month. Defense attorneys are seeking a variety of documents involving the Federal Reserve supervision and monitoring of Wilmington Trust. So I'm going to show you a picture, and this is the former bank president, Robert Hara, arrives at the courthouse for his arraignment, accompanied by his wife, Linda, and his lawyers, Michael Kelly and Andrew Lawler. So this is the file photo. Okay, so here we have an innocent claiming man with a loving wife who is supporting him, who is arriving at the courthouse saying that our prosecutors lied in order to get these charges filed against me. Okay, so now back to me. Okay. I don't know if you've ever watched the movie Independence Day, but I have, and it's one of my favorites because I love Will Smith. He's one of my favorite actors. But in that movie, there's a scene where they were talking about Area 51, and the man playing the president exclaims, "There is no Area 51, that's all a myth." And the general next to him says, "Mr. President, there is an Area 51. He's like, "Why didn't I know?" And they said, "Plausible deniability." Okay, what that means, that's a legal term. And that means that someone in charge can say, "You know what? That's something I really don't know about. I have no reason to know about this." So Matt Denn, who's overseeing this Attorney General's office and all these prosecutors, is, using plausible deniability to say that he doesn't know of any of this. The people that audit his department work for him. So let me say, here you are, it's annual review time, and you're going to get your raise and your bonus. So what do you tell your boss? "Hey boss, I think that we should go to the newspapers because the people that are working for you are routinely breaking the law and denying the constitutional rights of defendants that are up for trial. And they're doing that because they want to pad their numbers and look like they're working really hard. So instead of going after real criminals that are making life dangerous in the state, we're just going to write a book. We're going to make up a story. We're going to do whatever it takes to put innocent men in jail." And this is happening to men. It's not happening to women. And, it is a pattern. It's happened to Ken. It happened to Eric Husbands. It's happened to these 4 men. So people have said, "Why do you keep talking about this? Why do you bring it up? Why don't you just keep quiet?" And I know that in Ken's family culturally that you don't talk about things, but I do not want the governor to be able to say he has plausible deniability. That's why every morning I tell the governor and ask him to investigate. So Governor John Carney, you may not claim plausible deniability in this. Maybe you can in Wilmington Trust. You can't in my husband's case. His public defender, Ross Flockersy, is an attorney. And there is an organization in the state, and I posted the responses from them on some of the complaints that I made against Mr. Flockersy, Ms. Dunn, Jonathan Harding, and all of the members of the prosecutor's office that were nice enough to gang up on my husband on December 5th, 2016, and threaten him and make fun of the fact that he was using a walker. So, the Office of Disciplinary Counsel has a code of ethics for attorneys in the state of Delaware. That code of ethics has stuff like, I really need to represent the best interest of my client. You know, that's a no-brainer. Another is, if I have personal knowledge that another attorney is doing something that violates his code of ethics, I am honor-bound to report them. Alright, so, Mr. Flockersy and Ms. Dunn are extremely friendly every time we go to the courthouse. They're always together, they're drinking coffee, they're walking through the halls together. And from everything I know, I'm not a lawyer, but I thought that the prosecutor and the defense really weren't supposed to be talking about cases, and maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know. That's for, smarter people to decide. But I told Ross Flockersy that the prosecutor's office had manufactured evidence against my husband. I gave him copies of documents I had filed with the court on our first hearing that alleged what had happened. I provided him with the date of hearing and, to the best of my recollection, the exact words that were said by various prosecutors along the way. This was not one hearing, this was probably 3 or 4. He promised me that he was going to request the recorded audio transcripts of these hearings on CD. So, if he had done that and investigated my claim, he would have been honor-bound to report his friend Diane to the Office of Disciplinary Counsel and possibly have her disbarred. So, they apparently have a very great relationship. He didn't want to do that for whatever reason and hurt her career, etc., etc. So, my husband gets railroaded down and ends up in prison. I tried to get those transcripts, but, we've been going through Ken being approved for Social Security and stuff, and our income's been very tight, and it's $100 per hearing, so it would have cost us several $100s to obtain these CDs. One of the duties of the Public Defender's Office is to act as a liaison between the defendant and the state and facilitate the funding of these things. All of the complaints against public defenders have been that they simply refused to defend their client. So, they've all been tossed out of court because the judges say, you know what, an attorney, it's a private, even though it's a public defender, it's the same relationship as if you had a private attorney, so you can't hold the state responsible, you can't do this, blah, 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 blah. Some of the judges have laid out the basics for a successful argument as to how somebody could actually win. Okay, I have read those, and I know how to do that if I can find a lawyer or if I can get pro se motions filed on Ken's behalf. But I'm being prohibited from doing that because his public defender is Ross Flockersy, who will not remove himself from the case. He will block any motion, just as he did on March 10th of this year when we filed the motion to dismiss based on the violation of Ken's constitutional right to a speedy trial. And, he never had a trial in this. He was forced into a plea emotionally because of his physical condition and scared into it and told if he just only signed this little piece of paper, all they want is for you to go away and never talk to these girls again. And, I was there for over 2 days, an hour and a half worth of conversations with Ross Flockersy, basically telling my husband, your trial's next week. I am not going to do anything. I will not interview a single witness. I will not request these transcripts. I will not look at any of your records. Sign this paper. or you were going to go to jail for 60 years. So Ken signed the paper, even though he could not really comprehend that that was going to deny him of his constitutional right to appeal his sentence at the state level. That's why I have to get this in front of the federal attorney, because even though Ross Flockersy and Diane Dunn and Matt Den and the governor and all these other people I've talked to have what's called immunity from prosecution, they cannot be prosecuted for anything they do in the course of their work because they're state employees. Well, that is true. I cannot go into the Delaware court and file a civil or a criminal case against the governor, against Matt Den, against Ross Flockersy, against Diane Dunn. However, there is something in federal law that a state employee cannot willingly and knowingly violate the constitutional rights of a citizen. If they do so, they are subject to both civil and criminal action in federal court. That's why when I left the courthouse, before I was attacked on my birthday, I was headed for the U.S. Attorney's Office, which wouldn't have done me any good because later I found that in order to open a complaint, my husband's attorney has to do that. He's not going to open a complaint against himself, people. Come on now. I'm just tired of this. Diane Dunn is not going to submit a complaint against herself. The governor, who knows of this wrongdoing, is not going to open an investigation because they will open themselves to federal prosecution. Anyway, that's what's going on. That's why they're getting really, like right now, I'm getting $200 a day fine from code enforcement. Okay, I'm going to show you some of the stuff that they're saying is wrong. All right, they are saying that the grass in my backyard is over 8 inches high. Okay. All right, there's the grass. All right, and my son's been doing a lot of work, and part of it, there's a bare patch. And we just had a lot of rain. But if you look at that, that is not excessively high grass. Okay? So that's one thing. All right. The other is that we're in the process of moving. Okay? So as part of that, what we're doing is we're staging stuff. We're putting it in a trailer, and we're getting ready to move. Occasionally, for a little bit of time, we will have stuff outside. Okay, so that stuff, they consider, before we actually put it in the trailer, like if I go in to go to the bathroom or get a drink, this little code enforcement guy will run out, take pictures, and then issue us fines. Okay, so earlier today, we took the wheelchair carrier off of my Jeep, and we couldn't get in the garage, and the animals are trying to get out, so we went to the store, we came back, and we're about to actually put that in the garage. But that's part of the $200 a day fine because we're storing it outside. Okay. Here's a tree that we have in our front yard. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand on the sidewalk. Okay. So, do you see the branches of the tree? Those branches are causing us a $200 a day fine because they are interfering with the passage of people down the street. Allegedly. Okay? Here is the concession trailer. It does not have a trailer tag on it. That is because it is a farm vehicle registered to our property in Oklahoma, which does not require a tag. All that we have to do is when we're transporting it is put a sign on the back, Oklahoma farm vehicle, and some other information. All right. This trailer is 7 by 18 feet, and it's barely 7 feet high. So we're being charged that it's an oversized vehicle. Well, I walked around the neighborhood. If you can see right down the street, there is a boat that is longer than our trailer, and it's not getting cited. Okay? There's weeds around the neighborhood. They're not getting cited. Okay, here's Ken's truck. It's a Hemi. Okay, you heard me talk about the fact that I am probably the most horrible driver in the world. I will admit it. My mother, God bless her soul, failed her driver's test like 4 or 5 times growing up, and my dad finally patted her on the head and said, "Mary, don't worry your pretty little head. what I am going to do is I will drive you anywhere you wish to go. And he did so until the day that he died. When he died, my mother had to go out and get her license, and she did. I'm sure that my mother had a way with convincing men to do what she wanted. She was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful woman. And if she went there and, I'm a widow and I have to get my license and I'm so nervous, I'm sure they would have made a little allowance for her driving skills. Well, she taught me how to drive, okay? A month after my mom got her license, we were driving down Highway 56 from Johnstown, Pennsylvania to Seward, Pennsylvania. And we happened to go off the road. Now, this is a mountain. It's basically a river that runs down there, and there's a mountain on the left side and a mountain on the right side. So we were on one side, and we went through the guardrails, went flying over about 25 feet, and landed about 30 feet vertically down from where we started. However, nobody was hurt. There was really no damage to the car except for 4 flat tires. And the reason for that is our guardian angel was watching. And basically, we landed on a pile of coal dust from a coal truck that had an accident in the exact same spot a few months earlier, and there was just enough time for the coal to disintegrate enough to provide like a foot worth of very soft cushion, so we landed in a mattress, okay? I love my mom. She was a wonderful woman, but she couldn't drive, and she passed that on to me, and I cannot drive that Hemi, okay? I have tendons that have snapped in my right hand, and I have the little test where they stick the needles in the hand showing I don't have control of the nerves in my right arm or my right hand. I've been in physical therapy for it, that I've had to stop because of all this rigmarole that's going on and all the money that I'm spending on other things. So, do you really want to put me behind the wheel of a very huge Dodge 1500 Ram truck with a Hemi in it that as soon as you touch it just flies down the street? I don't think so, okay? My husband has never allowed me to even sit behind the steering wheel of that truck, even though my name is on the title. And you know what? I really don't blame him. It's his pride and joy. So, he has been too ill because of this prosecution to take it down and get his registration renewed. My son and I are going to do that, but we've been too busy mowing the yard and doing weeds and all these other tiny little things that we're getting cited for and fined $200 a day. And I think the fines are up around $6,000 or $8,000 right now. So, that's just another way that the state of Delaware maliciously prosecutes people that disagree with what the people in power say. So, I don't know. Today, after I wrote some comments regarding the problems we had with code enforcement that actually forced us to close our business, which would have created 45 jobs in Kent County, which had extremely high unemployment during the recession. I did get a nice little note from code enforcement asking me to call them and discuss my concerns and my experience with code enforcement in Delaware. So, I wrote a reply that probably wasn't quite as nice as it should be, and I apologize if I hurt anybody's feelings. But I basically said, look, I know you have a problem with our property. However, it is much,